Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today it's an interesting day, and the topic that I am bringing forward to you today is super interesting. It's about foreign travel and foreign settlement. I call it the topic of Kali Yuga because nowadays a large number of people are quite keen in traveling abroad, in settling abroad, which is quite unlikely, if you compare it with the ancient times and what used to happen. Um, but then, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe, hit the bell icon, please share it with your friends. Also, if you have any questions very specific to this topic, or feel free to share certain placements from your chart for me to address in the comments section. Also, you'd find the link to my website and consultations in the comment section itself, and feel free to reach out. So, this is about traveling abroad and settling abroad. So, I'd like to start with some basics first. Okay. Now, there are two things that matter a lot. Okay, one is the physical body that is outside of the home country, in abroad, but then home, or the property that you own, the real estate that you have, any apartment or a land or a villa, that is in the homeland. Okay, something that you own, right? The other aspect is having the home as well as the body, the physical body abroad in a foreign land. So this matters a lot. So there are a number of people who would perhaps travel abroad for a certain period of time, but they have their own home in the home country. But then there are certain people who travel and settle for a long term or permanently, and they also have a home in that country, which is different to their home country. So that's a basic difference that we need to understand. Okay. Now, from an astrological point of view, when we talk about foreign travel and settlement, there could be a number of reasons, number of houses involved, a number of planets involved, and at the same time, each and every graha is capable of sending someone abroad and helping someone settle as well. It will depend on its lordship. Um, Now let's put the basic things first. Okay, let me talk about some important houses which are responsible for traveling abroad and settling abroad for various reasons. Okay, first house in astrology, in Vedic astrology, there are 12 houses. First house is about yourself. Okay, fourth house is your home or your homeland. Okay, and the 12th to the first house is the house of foreigners, is the house of foreign lands. Okay, so these are some houses that are very important. Besides the first, fourth, and the 12th house, it is also the ninth house, which is related to long distance travel. Besides being fortune or bhagya or the house of father, it is related to long distance travel. The third house, which is also the 12th from the fourth house. So I'm going to use a lot of Bhavat Bhavam concepts as well in this video to keep it really simple for you and effective. Third house, besides the house of efforts and siblings and communication, it is also the house of short journeys. Any change that it triggers from the third house. It is third from the first, which indicates the first step towards growth. Okay, and it is the 12th from the fourth house. So it is also indicative of separation from your homeland and traveling abroad. And any change is indicated from the third house itself, and it indicates short journeys. Then we come to the eighth house, which is the house of longevity. It is the house of occult, hidden secret, some deep truths. Also the house of struggles, debts. This is also the house of being over the sea. Okay, that means overseas. Since it's unknown, it is also indicated to the house of some unknown language or a foreign language, and the ability to travel overseas. So this house plays a very important role in traveling overseas and also in permanently settling overseas. Okay. Um, so these are some houses which are very important when we talk about traveling abroad or settling abroad. Let's talk about the first and the most important rule that qualifies someone to travel and settle abroad. Okay, that is when we talk about fourth house, which is the house of your homeland, your home country, your motherland. So there has to be certain amount of affliction to this house, which means either the fourth house should be weak or afflicted, occupied or aspected by malefics, okay, or this house must have certain connection with the 12th house or its lord in some or the other manner. Okay, so this will certainly indicate a change, a trigger that will be there. The second basic rule is having planets or grahas in the movable signs. Okay, so the first, fourth, seventh, and tenth, which is Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, these are movable signs. So having more grahas in the movable signs or some prominent movable signs in your chart will indicate movement, and such people are advised to be moving as well, which is good for their overall well-being. Okay, so that's these are two very important rules which one must understand. Um, of course, people with prominent fixed sign placements, can move as well if there are other conditions that are favorable. But for grahas in movable signs, it becomes more easy and simple for such people and effective as well. Okay. Now, there could be different reasons for traveling abroad or settling abroad. One of the reasons is to study, and even while studying, there could be, either for high school or graduation or post-graduation. Okay, so let's talk about if someone would go for their graduation to study abroad. That's where the fifth house or its lord come into account a picture. And if someone is traveling for a post graduation or a higher degree, that's where the ninth lord or the ninth house comes into picture, because that is also the house of higher education where we see from. Okay. If someone is traveling for work, let's say it's a secondment or a temporary phase or a contract or a long-term job as well, something that's permanent, that's where the 10th house and its lord comes into picture. That is from the natal chart. Okay, and that matters a lot, right? And particularly when it comes to work, okay, from a transit perspective, okay, from when it comes to work visa and other paperwork that are related, from a transit perspective, the seventh lord's transit is quite important. Um, I mean, because seventh house is the house of agreements, right? And any such sort of work visa or a long-term visa is also an agreement that takes into account or place is the paperwork. So its transit matters a lot. Okay. Then in terms of the timing, we use dashas, mahadasha, antardasha, and pratantardasha to identify the timing. But based on what I have shared with you now, the houses which are responsible for permanently letting someone settle abroad. Okay, so this certain combinations can give travel, but whether a person would settle abroad permanently or not, that is dependent on primarily the third house, which is the 12th from the fourth house. The third house also is the fourth from the 12th house. 12th house is foreign lands. Fourth from the 12th house, which is the third house, indicates that you're likely to own a residence abroad or a house. It could be a villa or a land or an apartment or a townhouse. That depends on several factors and also on your Chaturthamsha, the D4 chart. But then it's very important for someone to settle abroad. The second house that we need to consider is the eighth house here, which is the house of overseas, foreign language, unknown place. Okay, so that plays a very important role in order to help someone settle abroad. The ninth house, which is long distance travel, traveling abroad, and the 12th house, which is the house of foreigners and the house of foreign land. Um, Besides this, as I mentioned earlier, seventh lord's favorable transit matters a lot in terms of getting the paperwork or the visa in place for a permanent residence. And in terms of the dashas, mahadashas, antardashas, pratantardasha, if you're running, let's say, your ninth lord dasha or the 12th lord dasha or the third lord dasha, so these dashas are quite important, right? I'll also talk about some planets which are important, but these dashas are quite important. If the lords of these houses are favorably placed in your chart or making connections and associations with each other, certain time periods can certainly trigger movement. So the sequence is such: first you need to understand whether there's a yoga in the chart of traveling abroad and settling abroad, whether there is an upcoming favorable dasha that can trigger this movement, and third and lastly, whether the transit is pretty much supportive of this dasha. And I'm also going to talk about some important transits as well, which we need to take into account. But then let's talk about some planets which play a particularly important role in triggering travel and foreign settlement. Venus is the first one that I'd like to perhaps pay careful attention on, because all the air travel is associated to Venus, because Venus is the karaka for conveyances. So, I mean, aeroplane is a kind of conveyance. So Venus is most important here. Rahu is indicated to all foreigners. So this makes it another important planet for foreign travel and settlement. Saturn is the third planet that I'd like you to pay careful attention on, because Saturn is also the significator of some unsettled energies, or it generally does not let you settle at one place for a long time if there's a prominent Saturn, or if you're running a Saturn dasha in your chart. So that can trigger movements, and these movements can also be quite frequent, right? Every 2 or 3 years, such people make a move. Okay. Um, the fourth important planet is Moon, which is the fastest moving graha. It transits in about 2.5 days from one sign to the other. And Moon is the significator of mind. So one needs to have that mindset as well to be able to travel and visit and settle in a foreign land. So these planets are quite supportive. But then other planets can also trigger a travel and also the foreign settlement. Okay, that being there. Now, from a transit perspective, okay, the most important transit to watch out for is the Saturn and Jupiter transit. Okay, and also the double transit, at once, um, because these transit run for a longer period of time and holds more importance in terms of triggering specific events. Okay, just to take one example that just recently Saturn's it's retrograde and it's back to Capricorn, and it's going to be there for a few months. So it's an important transit to take into account. Jupiter is currently transiting in the sign of Pisces, which is natural 12th house of the zodiac. So I'm not surprised that I'm making a video on foreign travel and settlement, during this transit. It's a good omen as well. And Jupiter is going to go retrograde later this month, but is going to stay in Pisces. So these are some important transits to watch out for, which can certainly trigger and support certain events. Next up is another important concept that I'd like to talk about is from a divisional chart perspective. We must read and understand the D4, which is the Chaturthamsha chart, which is related to property, real estate, owning a house, and your overall well-being. It is also the chart which is mapped to the fourth house of your Rashi chart, of your natal D1 chart, which makes it a very important chart because it is mapped to a Kendra house. We must understand the placements of these lords in the Chaturthamsha chart and the connections that they're making there. The third lord, fourth lord, eighth lord, ninth lord, and the 12th lord, and also your Lagna lord. Plus, we must look at the situation of the fourth house and the fourth lord of the Chaturthamsha chart, and if it is positively placed, that can very well indicate and be favorable for you to own a house while living abroad. So that must be, carefully studied and understood. I mean, that will give a final, sort of an approval stamp on your yoga, which is the this most important divisional chart. Okay. Lastly, that I'm going to talk about, which I mean, no one has ever spoken. There've been there might be several videos on foreign travel and settlement, but then we must pay careful attention to the Navamsha chart, the D9 chart here, and particularly the ascendant sign in the D9 chart. Okay. Um, Now I'll keep it very simple for you. There's certain houses that I've mentioned, and if you have a particular ascendant sign which maps back to your Rashi chart with a particular house. So, for example, if you are an Aries rising in D1, if you're Aries Lagna, ascendant, and then if you are a Gemini rising in your Navamsha chart, which means that your third house of the D1 chart becomes your ascendant of the Navamsha chart. Okay, there are possibilities, and such travel or movement is favorable. So similarly, if your Navamsha Lagna is mapped back to the third house, the eighth house, the ninth house, or the 12th house, it is considered favorable. Particularly if you have your 12th house as the Lagna sign of the Navamsha. For such people, I always advise never stay in your country. Move to a foreign land. At least settle miles away from your hometown. Okay, that will always be favorable. So there should be a careful attention on the Navamsha, and particularly the ascendant sign in the Vamsha, which can further be favorable. Okay, so just to summarize, very quickly, the basic rule is affliction to the fourth house. The next important rule is planets in movable signs 1, 4, 7, and 10. Okay, the important houses, which is third, eighth, ninth, 12th, and also the fourth house. Okay, the yogas, dashas, and the transit. Jupiter and Saturn's transit, which can be favorable. The role that the seventh lord plays and its transit, particularly with regards to timing and the paperwork, whether it'll be successful or you'll have some hardships or challenges. And that's where the remedy comes from as well. Okay, so and the important planets, so Venus for air travel, Rahu for foreigners, Saturn for frequent changes, Moon for having a mindset, and of course the other grahas that are involved as well. So this is about foreign travel and settlement. And of course, I tried to give you some reasons as well. In case you like this video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel. Please share it with your friends, and I look forward to your questions in the comment section, and I'll try to interact with each and every one of you. And once again, check out the links to my website, my blogs, and watch out for more interesting videos in Jyotish. Have a good day and a great weekend ahead. Thank you very much.